Docking request accepted.
Good morning, New Eden. Today is October 14th, 2024, and this is the Federation Frontline Report. I'm your host, Frozen Fallout, and we're continuing our series on the CSM 19 interviews for the candidates of CSM. Creatnos is meeting with us today to tell the story and tell the platform of what he has to talk about for CSM here. Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for showing up, man.
Thank you, and thanks for everyone tuning in.
Awesome, yeah, glad to have you. So tell me, just kind of start off the ball rolling here. How'd you get into EVE Online? How'd you learn about this game?
Yeah, for sure. So, I actually started playing back in 2010. My dad started playing the game about a week or two before I did. He started playing. I was still a little kid in school, and I saw a spaceship game. Thought it was pretty cool. Decided to check it out. Um, so that kind of got the ball rolling, and joined a small Hisec corporation. Um, and that's kind of where I started.
So you started off with your dad. So did you and your dad kind of was this a bonding experience for you?
Yeah, very much so. It was one of those where I was still in school, and I'd spend my evenings like watching him play and learn the game. Um, when I was even younger, we played games like RuneScape and stuff like that together. So it was a continuation of that kind of experience.
Interesting. So is that something that you is your dad still playing the game today?
Very lightly, I'd say. He recently restarted just to make a new account, and kind of he didn't keep up with the game for the last couple of years, so he wanted to kind of start fresh and play it in a much more casual way. I'd say not for the last 6-7 years at least. He hasn't really played too much.
Is he helping you with the CSM campaign?
Um, Not really, but that's mostly because I didn't really inform him until a few days ago.
Dad, by the way, I'm running for, the council stellar manager. So how old were you when this was kind of going on? Sounds like your teenage eras, like
Yeah, so early teens. So it was around like middle school entering into high school. So
okay,
probably around
so
like 14ish, I'd say.
okay, so you just broke your brain actually is fully developed. You're 28-ish years old, is that right?
Yep.
Awesome.
And I'd say that a large portion of that molding was through Eve Online. Uh,
That's crazy, yeah, to come up because I encountered it back in 2003 and like looked at the game and I'm like, I don't know what the fuck this is. Crazy shit, man. Great idea, but and really got into it but that was around I was like 19. So it sounds like you've had like a large chunk of your formative years kind of coming up. So tell us what did you do in the first like 4 years of the game?
so the first probably like half a year, it was all like high sec learning the game. With this one corporation that we joined, that actually a lot of those guys still play. The corp's been rebranded. It currently goes by the Milkmen. They live in lowsec, but it was called Most Feared Gaming, I believe, at that point in time when I joined it. And it was a group that was kind of like a multi gaming community, so they played all sorts of different video games, not just Eve. But then I spent the first couple of years were mostly spent in test.
Okay.
Um, so that was when test was still kind of on the up and up. When they had just moved into Fountain toward the tail end of those first couple of years, but kind of their rise to power. Um, so that's where I started off. What helped, started learning how to FC, started helping out in like positions of not necessarily leadership, but like helping scouting and learning a lot of the assisting facets of the game of how things really work behind the scenes.
Awesome. So okay, so you were with Test. So did you go all the way through to the fall of Test
I was with Test up until I think when they lost Fountain, when they
to
kind of
Goons in the Fountain
collapsed the
War?
first time. Yeah. So they had still they didn't, not really till the latest collapse by any means, but
Hmm.
I would say the first time. Um and after that I joined a different corp with an old PLFC named Rick Hoover, and we joined first we went to Black Legion after Test. Spent about a year or so there. Then moved to Pandemic Legion after that. Spent a long time in Pandemic Legion through World War B. And then basically after World War B ended and Goons left the North, I took a bit of a break from the game for a few years. Not like a full break, but it was the years I was in college, so I didn't have as much time to play. So I was still keeping up, but not as active. Not putting in the 40 to 60 hours a week that I was before when I could do it in high
You're not
school.
full time, you know. You're only part time, man.
Exactly, exactly. But yeah, I
So
mean, among that time, I spent some time in wormholes with Hard Knocks. When Noobman was still around there. Did some faction warfare more recently
oh,
in the Minmatar zone.
who you fighting for?
I was with Amar at the time. Um,
Slavers. Okay, hold on. Just gotta say, you know, I gotta ask. What brings you to the men that enslave humans? What's your thought patterns there?
I'm very good at being given a target and told to execute a mission and making sure it goes right. I'm not really one to argue with the politics.
You're not we're not worried about the philosophical implications of actions. Go do.
That, but also, despite them being the slavers, they were also the numerical underdogs at that point in
They
time when I
were
came in, and I
absolutely, and they
was,
still kind of are.
yeah, for sure. And this when when I came back and started doing the FAC war, Mimitar Fleet was not nearly as big as it was today.
Hmm.
Mimitar Fleet Alliance, that is. So most of our fights were small skirmishes with Bear That Cares, but while he can form much bigger than he could then, we were doing like 15v15 battlecruiser, brawls, and that was like both of our groups at max form.
Right.
It's obviously been a bit of a difference now, but
Yeah. So, what have you been up to lately? What's the current things that you've been participating in?
So right now, aside from doing blopsing with various groups in the game, NSH, the alliance I'm in, is involved in a small war going on between Sedition and Shadow Cartel and some other alliances that are involved in like the Genesis, Essence area over Metnoxes, which
Oh,
has been a
cool.
lot of fun, and it's like the only USTZ content that's readily available in the game. Um, over two sides that have sort of even numbers.
So what's
So
the sides here? If you could give us a breakdown of who versus who is going on in this situation here.
yeah, so it's essentially Shadow Cartel and all their bat phone slash allies on one side, and then Sedition, Churn and Burn, Nullsec, Lupin, and a couple of their allies on the other side.
Okay, which side are you on here?
I'm on the Sedition side with Young
Okay,
Puke.
okay, yep. Like Young Puke, I've flown with him a whole bunch. He's a good guy for sure.
Yeah, good FC, good guy, lots of energy.
Lots of energy, lots of energy. Doesn't like shitty players, but that's okay.
But yeah, it's been a lot of fun. It's nice being the ones to kind of get out there and create our own content. We don't have to go and wait for other groups to kind of make their own timers and third party on them. We could just go out, reinforce some drills, force the enemies to respond or kill their assets, and that's kind of been something I've really been interested in my whole time playing Eve is the political landscape and like objective based combat. Um, I in the beginning, when I was just starting off in the game, like I could go out on a roam and just do like the small casual thing. But the more I got into it, the more I was like, oh, I want to do something that has big impact. I want to trap capitals doing things. I want to hunt supers. Do the stuff that really affects people and the game as a whole.
So if you had to give me a breakdown of what your primary platform is for the CSM run here, what would you say that you're campaigning on specifically? If you could break it down into a few points for us.
Yeah, so my campaign overall revolves around one thing, and that's just bringing more PvP to the game in terms of medium and large scale combat. Um, I'm not really much of a solo player, and I do some small gang stuff, but small gang in my world usually ends up escalating. So medium and large gang fighting and anything that can stimulate that kind of environment. So different solve mechanics, different structure mechanics are all related in that aspect.
So is there any specific solution that you would bring to the to help foster that kind of environment?
Yeah, so a couple of the main points that I want to campaign on. One is skyhook rating. With the Equinox expansion, I know there's been kind of a lot of uproar, and I was involved in one of the groups. I lived in a C2 for a couple of weeks raiding nullsec wormhole, so I have a lot of experience from both sides about how it feels. And I think it was a great thing that they added to the game. And while it needed to be modified a little bit, the way it got changed was a step or a few steps too far. And there's pretty much no more um, content from a small, medium, and even any PvP aspect to it anymore. The second thing I would say is general force projection, which I know has been an issue for a while now, and other candidates are also partially on that or entirely on that platform. But just in terms of nullsec, um, and also in some regards lowsec as well, but be limiting the ability for groups to reposition forces and just n+1 each other in extremely short periods of time. Um, and I guess the last thing, uh, well, two things. One is moon drills, which has been a great source of content for me. I think there's some tweaks that can be made specifically for the HP balancing of it. I don't know if anyone here has shot them, but they have a whole lot of HP to shoot, but not a whole lot to rep. There's a little bit of an imbalance there, I think.
More
And
resistance, less HP is what you're saying?
yeah, I think that would be an easily doable fix that would kind of make it more balanced. Because if I'm spending 2 hours to shoot something that can take them 3 minutes to rep with a fax, or like 5 minutes with 6 T1 logistics cruisers, it seems a little bit unfortunate at times. And the last one is the Fuzzy Solve, the current solve mechanics we have with Intosising. I think it was a good idea for the time when people didn't have as many ways to combat SBUs being put down all the time. But I think in 2024, we have the ability to combat that better. So I would say even the old system would be better than what we have now. But I just want to explore the ability to kind of iterate on that at least and not leave it in the state it is now.
Yeah, definitely. So if you had to distill down one thing that you were gonna fight for hard fucking core, this is your number one issue. It doesn't even have to be the number one thing that you think needs to be fixed as much as this is the thing that you think you can do. And this is the thing that if you get on CSM, you're gonna ensure this thing. So it doesn't need to be a big thing. This thing is gonna get fucking done on my CSM run. What would you say?
Um, I'd say, and this is, I think, because some of my closest Eve friends were really into this mechanic when it came out, is fixing the skyhook rating.
Okay.
The recent, not necessarily reverting the changes fully, but putting it in a spot that's allows for both PvP and nullsec blocks to not have to, babysit the structure all day in and day out. Um, I know we have some announcements about another kind of structure that's coming out in the November patch, so it's hard to say where that will end up without any details.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm very curious to see what that looks like on release. But that's the one thing I would love to change, because I think it was a great feature with a lot of potential that kind of just got swept away at this point, and is now just free income for nullsec groups.
So with the understanding that we understand that CSM definitely doesn't get this power. It's, we're advisors or a focus group. I've heard as a good analogy as to what we are able to do on the CSM. A lot of it is tweaking of the small things here and there. They present you a big change that's kind of going on. You get to make your suggestions on what can be done to make sure that big change is successful. But if you were able to grab a hold of skyhooks, you got full development superpowers here, and spaghetti code goes out the window. How would you ensure that there is a balance between the offense and defense, and how would you envision skyhooks in the future? Taking into account also that, and even though we don't have information on it, but if you could speculate on what you would love to see this new structure apparently that's coming out.
Yeah, so for the skyhooks, I think the removal of the maturation bay and changing it to I'm not sure what they call it now, but the one where 50% gets dropped. I think that was a great step. That's definitely a viable fix. Um, and I think that even leaving it there would have solved out some of the issues. Now, with the change to where you have 1 hour vulnerability every 3 days, I think that's the big thing that I would like to see removed, and change it to where you can eliminate a 6 to 8 hour time period, where think you have a invulnerability timer, so you can be rated for this 6 to 8 hours per se. I'm not sure about the time, but I think something like that, where during your active time zone and maybe some of your off time zone, you can be rated. And this is knowing that at any time you're only losing 50%.
Mm-hmm.
You have a secure bay that's going to keep 50%, so you're getting essentially free resources anyway. But it alleviates the issue where groups like for example, fraternity, who are primarily Chinese time zone, are getting rated in EU time zone and can't really contest, or groups like the inverse, groups like Goonswarm, who's getting rated in Chinese time zone or something. And you don't want that. You don't want to get offline rated like in Rust.
There is, I mean, I am I'm a huge Skyhook fan. Rated the fuck out of them. I was an asshole. I came with my one ENI and my one Deluge. And we had cloaks. I came in, I'd take your shit, and then I'd go somebody else, and I'd take somebody else's shit. And it was way too much in my favor. However, there was defenders already at that level. And there were certain areas of space that I was like, oh, I'm in space. I might not even want to take a chance here. Fuck it. I can't find a single system with nobody in it. Because as a single raider, there was a lot of content, I feel like, for people being able to come in and just blow me apart, because I couldn't fuck with a ratter. Like, that could hit me at 150 kilometers. I'm fucked. Like, I
Yep.
lost an E&I. Here we go. And then I start my whole raid over again. There was, but then I came in with small gangs too. I used a lot of small gang. I was contemplating a whole thing for what I was gonna do for Spectre Fleet. We are gonna fund every little bit of SRP for the rest of Spectre Fleet's days by raiding, and it was way too much on our side. But I have been also talking with a lot of people who are like, yeah, we need Metanox drills, and we need to have these magnomatic gas. It needs to be It needs to be all over the place. It's the only thing that's going to help build a new economy that is going to bring down the industrial costs of T2 items and supers and capitals and stuff, is by the new era of Metanox drills. And you've also brought up that you've had a lot of fun fighting with Metanox drills. Do you think that there is there needs to be, that there was like a constraint on how much it was worth it to actually build these drills and use these drills, and that these drills are actually a really good content creator, passive income creator. They do really good. The new introduction of these Metanox drills are healthy to the game, because I've been on the, I'm gonna say that I've been on the side that I've been listening to the other side, but I'm on the side that's like, this is a new fucking item that's just the same as the old fucking moon drill, like passive income bullshit that we got away from by having, you know, a, you have to actually go mine a moon type kind of shit. It's a brand new item in the game, so stop crying, because it's worth billions upon billions of ISK. As I've been rating these things, I've been finding out I've been just making insane amount of ISKs off of this. So if I'm making insane amount of ISK off of this, you've got to be making an insane amount of fucking ISK off of this shit. Like, this is just a huge faucet of, not necessarily ISK, because it's not a, but it's a faucet of items that are worth a lot of money and that make you passive income, basically, right?
Yeah, so with the skyhooks and the drills, it's kind of created that combo of a lot more items that are definitely being put out there. With the drills, it's a healthier version of when we had pos moon mining back in the day, when like all of goons had the tech empire and those days. And I feel like it's nicer because you don't have that weird timer with posses where it'll come out at, you don't know how long it's shrouded for, so it's a little easier to find fights. You can scan down and drill that, when it comes out, it's got a set timer plus minus 30 minutes. So if you're a USTZ group, and you want to force some fights or kill a drill, you can go out and find the timer. You don't have to waste time shooting something that can come out, 12 hours outside your time zone. But it also does create that passive income, so groups actually want to go out and get it. And you know obviously groups like Snuff and Deepwater will hoard them and really protect them in their areas, at least speaking about lowsec. But there's other areas of lowsec where I've seen groups go out and put their drills down, and maybe they get touched or maybe they get left alone. But either
How
way, they're
harassable do you think these are? Since you've been playing with them, is this something that like a small 10-man group can go and harass these things, or is this something that really you've got to have, like, you know, a sizable force to come in and fuck with these things?
Oh, 100%. I mean, this war that we're in right now, it's kind of a battle of whose people have the most resilience. I mean, the other side has a guy that does 4 praxis and reinforces them, and we have a guy who does a couple of taloses. So the structures don't actually shoot back. So it's very easy to stay on grid. We've had guys do it in bombers. They do have a lot of HP, so it's a bit of a time sink, but it's not like a structure where you're worried about someone manning it, and it's not like old moons where they can have a Death Star and you have to worry about like a ton of DPS shooting you with automated guns.
Yeah, no, I've heard some inklings on Reddit and the like, and I've been hearing about the Mexilon Moon Drill wars that are kind of happening in 0 points or in low sec. Not much is actually in 0 0.0. A lot of low sec stuff. That's like revitalized low secs, little fight wars and stuff like that. Um, so I'm interested to kind of see what kind of happens with this. Um, so kind of moving along though, is there anything that you want to make sure that you want to talk about for a good amount of time that we haven't really even touched on yet?
I think the other thing that's really big and I would really like to see happen is something with force projection in the game. And this was something that, being in groups like Black Legion, Pandemic Legion, I've been on the side where we've done the thing that's the best in the game at that period in time. Back in the days where PL had the biggest, baddest super cap fleet that can run up and down the universe in 5 minutes without jump fatigue. So I'm very aware of the problems that causes in the game. I just think that the issue right now, with well with what was Zarzak before the recent change, and then still with Ansiblexes in nullsec, um, unidentified wormholes, things like that, where people just get from one point to another in the universe within minutes. If you can take a 250-man battleship fleet and go from Delve to Tenerife in 5 minutes, that's probably not ideal for nullsec wars to happen, because then what happens is these groups just one will form a little bit more than the other, and then they won't fight. Or Horde will, do the same thing going across all of the drone lands and up to frat space. It's like the map just feels smaller and fights happen less and less often.
Do you have any solutions that you'd like to bring to foster fights, to foster a community that wants to actually get out and blow each other up and take space? Is there anything that you think would be essential, either a small tweak or a large tweak that is needed to make people actually fight in the stagnant environment that we're in?
Great question. I don't know how to necessarily make people want space more. I think that was the whole point of Equinox, and I'm hoping that over the next couple of tweaks and expansions, we see a real desire for people to go, because the things that are supposed to entice people to come down haven't really been. Nullsec doesn't feel much different from having characters there and speaking to a lot of people. But what I can say is if groups are less able to fully project their forces, then smaller skirmishes can start occurring where two blocks may not need 1,000 people to fight each other. They could just have 100 people taking out two fleets and fighting each other. And I think the only way to do that is possibly, or one thing they can do, is by putting like fatigue on jump bridges. I think that's a very reasonable, already done thing that existed in the game, and I think that's the first step to creating this environment where we will maybe one day get out of having a blue donut in nullsec.
So how do you feel about doing the full, batch on that and say that this is just we don't change the jump fatigue penalty, and that it's just full bore, just like if you jumped your cap? Um, or do you see that there needs to be some kind of allowance for force projection within your own territory that doesn't affect your capital gameplay?
I think more so than projection, I think you should be able to traverse your own space fairly quickly. Like, if I was living and I had a few regions that my alliance or my coalition owned, I'd want to be able to have some ability to, move myself from one side to another with faster than just taking gates. So I wouldn't want jump bridges effectively fully removed or fatigued out. Whether that means having like haulers or other vessels allow you to transport yourself more quickly than any other ship that would be used in a fleet. I would be
That's
okay
kind of
with
there
that.
with a lot of the haulers are 90% jump fatigue.
Right. And even some say that this will just lead to people having to they'll shuttle to the front line, but I would say even forcing them to have to do one thing different may result in a better situation, even if they have to have a full deployment of ships closer to the front line and being in the combat zone and have to go there. People will want to fight more because they won't be able to just go 5 minutes there and 5 minutes back. They'll have to really put in the effort of buying the ships out there, getting
They
to
have
the
to
front
live in the
lines. They'll want to
space that
fight.
they want to fight in. They can't just,
Exactly.
even if they say that, well, I'll just bring a shuttle. It's like, well, okay, now you've got two places you got to store warships, right? Like, and it's gonna force you to live out on the front line a lot more. We're gonna be like, fuck that shuttle ride. That sucks.
Right.
You know.
Yep. And at the end of the day, I just want to see more PvP. I usually am watching kill boards. I have Z kill up. I'm curious when big fights are happening, just because I'm very curious about like the strategies that are going on and the political landscape. And I mean, there's been strings of days recently where it's like you look at Zkill and it's like there's no big gangs have fought. It's like, oh, the most that's happened today is some freighters were ganked in Uedama, and it's like that was the highlight of today. And it just coming from a time period where there was always fighting, and it's like some group was fighting each other in this part of the world and some part was fighting in this part of the world. It just feels unfortunate to be still in the game, but like the content level has gone down.
Yeah, it's gotten really stagnant in the last 4 years, and it feels like scarcity is kind of the thing that ever since scarcity came in, maybe it's about 3 years. That scarcity came in and came in full frontal and kind of was like, okay, shit's going to be really expensive. How do you kind of feel about that? Is the economy better off when, you know, majority of ships are outside the range of wanting to have to throw into combat for a small group, or is there, you know, a different way of kind of looking at this of like, because I've had it kind of presented to me that scarcity was like a way to save the economy, that this is a way to prevent things from becoming out of control where, you know, everybody has a super carrier. You know, is that a problem? You know, is everybody having a super carrier a problem in this game?
Um, while I wouldn't want to see that, I'd rather have people more willing to throw around capitals and bigger ships. So I'd say no, it's not. I mean, we lived through the Rorqual days where supers were down to like 13, 15 bill a hull,
Right,
and
yep.
now we're at, they're like 50, upwards of 60, somewhere in that area. Titans are over 200 bill, and when I left the game, I sold mine for like 80. So back in those days, a lot of people had them, and they were even being used more. Granted, those were days of tracking titans. And there's some other things that can be said for that, but I would say even if we just focus on dreads, faxes, and carriers, I would love to see them go down in price a little bit and just see people dread brawl a little more often. I mean, the last one I think was the last big one, um, was the Snuff Deepwater one over that moon drill, and I feel like everyone's still been restocking since then. I'm sure the big groups have enough money and already replaced them. We had our own little dread brawl. I think a couple of weeks ago it was little three-way dread bomb. So those are always fun, and people who I fly with typically have enough ISK or make enough ISK or are willing to throw around dreads. But I know other groups are like, look, I've got this, this one dread. I'm maybe not making billions of ISK a day, a week, or whatever, and it costs like 4 bill for the hull, 6, 7 bill fitted or whatever, and they don't want to risk that stuff. But seeing those kind of fights is what really brings excitement to the game, makes cool videos and things like that.
Do you have anything that you think would be a good change in order to bring these prices down on this? Because I've kind of heard that Mexilon drills is that answer, and that therefore having really strong, um, you know, defenses on skyhooks is actually the way to kind of go forward on bringing the price down on all these things.
Yeah, so I'm no economist by any means of the word, um, but um, I think that the changes here for Metnox drills in a parallel skyhooks as well is a step in the right direction. I don't think they've really had too big of a price change. I think what I was kind of expecting was the equinox changes to the ore anomalies was going to um, you know put us somewhere in the direction of the days of the Rorqual mining, the unlimited spawning colossals. Obviously, we don't want to get to that point, I don't think, but I thought it was going to be a step in that direction where things were going to get cheaper drastically. And what I did not expect is essentially the opposite, where at least super carriers have gone up in price. That was a big shock to me when, after the Equinox changes were supposed to reinvigorate Null, and they created the new anomalies and some other content, but mining almost became more difficult with these new changes, and we're not even in full-fledged revamp yet, right? I believe the Sav Force changes are at the end of October when CCP force switches all of nullsec sovereignty to the new
Mm-hmm.
mechanic.
Yeah, a little bit of ways out here. So do you? I mean, because the biggest one that I've kind of heard is from the miners that the rocks are small, right? That it you gotta pop one and then you just gotta move over to another. Do you think active gameplay in mining is necessary, or is it something that should be like I got 15 accounts, click a button every once in a while, gives a fuck. I'm gonna watch some Netflix over here.
Um, my only issue with the passive side of it is it leads to botting very quickly when it becomes too passive. Um, and a lot of multi-boxing with input broadcasting. But overall, if people are multi-boxing, it becomes a tedious task, and then it leads to a worse economy, and it ends up where we are now,
And I would
where we
almost
don't
kind
have.
of say, how would you say that it becomes a more proficient botting? Because adding a few more clicks to go find a thing and go do it actually is more like the botting is, like I should do botting if there's a bunch more clicks, because
Well,
then I did, because it's not, it's not if it's really just something that doesn't take botting at all, then I'm not gonna bot it. I'm just gonna do it and watch some Netflix. But if I forced into botting this thing because there's a 20 more clicks that I need to do in order to accomplish my task, well, might as well let the bot do it because I've got 20 fucking accounts to do it, right?
yeah, I see what you're saying. I guess for my view of it is they're mostly spending time when you have a lot of multi-boxing miners, and they're actually having to warp around and travel between rock to rock or site to site. Um, not saying that bots can't do that, but I don't necessarily think it's as
Well,
prevalent.
I kind of feel like the bots are really good at doing the stupid simple, right? So if you're gonna put something in there, you have to put something in there that is not easily bottable. If you want to deter bots, you have to deter them by making it something like the picture quest, right? Like
Yeah,
bots aren't doing hacking in this game,
sure. Yeah,
but
no,
they are mining. And the more simplistic you make mining, the more that it makes it easy to bot. But I also would say that it's much easier for somebody to say that fuck botting. I'm just gonna actually like play the game. And then the one thing that I would say that and this was somebody that kind of brought it into me from when I was at Vegas, was this idea of like, well, yeah, let them be in outer space AFK, because that's great. Like they're not paying attention to what's going on. It's only the bots that have the advantage of running away without watching what's going on. But the bots are going to be there, and they're always, anybody who's botting that gets put up the barrier. If you have to add 3 more clicks for my bot, is just going to continue to do that.
yeah, you're probably right.
So moving on here, though, is there anybody that you would like to give a shout out to? Anybody that's behind the scenes that have been working with you? Anybody on your crew? Your mom, your dad? I'm sure they're watching this, so they want to, definitely give them a shout out. But yeah, anybody that you want to talk about before we close up shop here?
Yeah, sure. It's definitely shout out to my dad for getting me into the game in the first place. I mean, I wouldn't be here if he didn't pick up the game after the new year and get me hooked. So thanks for getting me hooked on video games in my teen years. But also to the guys in my corp in NSH. Definitely supporting me doing this year. I didn't really have like a lot of plans from last year going into this. It was a bit of a spur of the moment thing, and definitely helping out, keeping things running while I'm taking care of this stuff, and helping spread the word um, about the campaign, and just playing the game and giving ideas and feedback. Because really, at the end of the day, that's what I want to do. I think that's what pretty much all of the CSM guys and gals want to do is get feedback from the players to try and make this a better game.
So going off of that, how do we get feedback to you? Do you do Twitch? Do you do YouTube? Do you do Twitter? Are we can we shoot you in-game mails? Discord? What's the best way to get a hold of you? What are some of the different things that you've been putting out into the content creation universe?
So I've said this on a couple of streams before. I'm a Discord gamer, uh, and pretty much any time at weird times I'll be around and answering questions. I uh, it irritates me when I have pop-ups, so I will probably respond to you faster than you want me to respond to you. So Discord is definitely the best way to reach me. In-game email is fine too. I am definitely one of the applicants to CSM who's very much actively playing the game. Um, I log in almost every day, doing fleets, just idling, talking to people. So I'm around. You could toss me a convo in game if you see me, or just shoot me an email. I'll probably respond pretty quick. I do have my own CSM Discord for people who have any specific questions for the campaign, and that can be found on my campaign page post on the EVE Online forums, as well as you could just directly message me. I'm on the EVE Online Discord.
Awesome. Yeah. And so yeah, thanks so much for coming on. I feel like you've got some good, interesting ideas that you're kind of bringing to the table here, and I hope to hear more from you. I kind of want to bring you on to hear more about your history, your story of all the different things that you've done. Any kind of activity, stories of what you and your dad have done. Be really cool to have you back on here. So before we kind of wrap up shop, is there anything else that you want to talk about before we wrap up here?
Um, no, I mean, I think we've covered a lot. I just hope that people go out and vote for the CSM members. I know myself, I haven't always voted, and I'm guilty of that. But I hope people. There's a pretty wide variety of applicants this year, and that might be just because I'm paying more attention to it this year. Obviously, a lot more than other years. But I think it's important for people to vote for the people that they like their ideas, and there's pretty much someone in that position for everyone. So don't be afraid to just vote for the people you think are good.
Well said, well said. Well, thank you so much for coming on here. Thank you all for listening, for those who are watching, and have a great night.
Thanks so much for having me. Have a good one.